Kathy.
I'm delighted to be joining you, Ollie and Michael, to share our thoughts on the ecological civilization, Earth, religion, and the human future. As we prepared for this event, we noted that though the four of us come from quite different backgrounds, we share a deep love for the beauty and spirit of life, the living Earth, and humanity's potential. We agreed to each share a bit of our personal story to which we attribute that love. I was born at the end of the Great Depression. I grew up in the post-World War II era with two passions. One, a deep love of nature here in the great US Northwest, in which I grew up. Two, a deep concern for the threat posed to the American way of life by the communist revolutions then sweeping the world. As a college senior at Stanford, I took a seminar on modern revolution. There I learned that the revolutions I so feared were a response to poverty. Already headed for business school, I decided to devote my life to sharing with the world's poor the secrets of US business success. Thereby, we would end poverty and the need for revolution. To that end, I went on to get MBA and PhD degrees from the Stanford Business School. And for several years, I then taught on the faculty of the Harvard Business School while working with leading business schools in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. I also advised the Ford and Rockefeller Foundations and US foreign aid missions throughout Asia and the Pacific on strategies to empower the poor. In the course of that work, I had the privilege of engaging with the wondrous diversity of the world's people, of dramatically differing cultures, economic circumstances, and ways of living. And nearly all, irrespective of whether rich or poor, were beautiful, caring people who took delight in helping and caring for a stranger. And the poorest were often the most generous. Then in the late 1980s, I had a rude awakening about my country, the United States. I realized that most US foreign policy is not driven by a commitment to spreading democracy and ending poverty. It is driven by the corporate interests of a few of the world's richest people seeking to grow their own fortunes. The result is ever-growing inequality, deprivation, and environmental devastation. I spelled it out in the book for which I'm best known, When Corporations Rule the World. The consequences are playing out in the three emergencies now disrupting the lives of every person on Earth. One, the climate emergency that results from consumption beyond what a finite Earth can sustain. Two, the pandemic that results from human disruption of nature. And three, Russia's invasion of the Ukraine on a violent competition for what remains of Earth's productive land and resources. All three emergencies result from our failure to recognize and adapt to our true nature as living beings, born of and nurtured by a finite living Earth. We organize instead as if we were financial beings for whom money can provide an endlessly growing human population with ever-growing consumption. In the resulting pursuit of money, we destroy life for financial gain, a self-destructive moral lapse that suggests a failure of our institutions of religion to which we turn for moral guidance. The barriers to corrective action are immense, and the institutional implications are breathtaking. But the ultimate barriers reside mostly in the human mind, which can quickly change. Hope lies in our ability to draw from all the many sources of human understanding to actualize our full potential as caring, creative, responsible members of Earth's community of life. Spiritual understanding has an especially significant defining role. Early human experience brought an intuitive understanding of life's interdependence that is beautifully captured by the South African concept of Ubuntu, which translates, I am because you are. Guided by this simple and essential truth, early humans self-organized as small, relatively isolated communities of people who knew, cared for, and depended on one another. Together, they created their means of living through their labor from what nature provided in their place. As the human population grew, communities found themselves competing for control of the territory on which their means of living depended. This led to organizing as competing nation states and eventually as competing transnational corporations, using a combination of military, police, and economic powers to centralize control by the few of the means of living of the many. Life, by its nature, self-organizes from the bottom up as interconnected communities. Members of each community constantly adapt to local conditions to meet their own needs in ways consistent with the needs of other community members. Contemporary humans, however, organize not as self-organizing place-based communities. Rather, they organize as hierarchies of individuals competing for power to expropriate the products of the labor of nature and other people. These top-down structures limit local control and suppress local adaptation. The winners consume massive resources to maintain the structures of domination and to reward themselves with lives of opulent, ultimately dehumanizing extravagance. The overwhelming evidence of system failure drives conflict and a loss of institutional credibility. To secure our future, we must learn to live as living beings on a finite living earth. Using tools of science that were beyond the means of our ancestors, we are coming to a profoundly deeper understanding of life to which our ancestors had no access. Take our most intimate experience of life, our own body, the vessel of our individual consciousness, and the instrument of our agency. Your body and mind is comprised of 30 to 40 trillion living cells that in turn depend on the support of comparable trillions of microbial cells, including wondrously varied forms of bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Each cell makes constant decisions essential to our body's ability to serve our consciousness. And this is just one human body. Earth is a vastly larger and more complex organism. It also survives as a living being only for so long as its countless individual organisms self-organize as a living community to create and maintain the conditions of climate, pure air and water, fertile soil, and much else on which Earth's life depends. The science has discovered it did not just magically come to be. It was a difficult journey of mutual learning over some 3 to 7 billion years. During this time, life evolved from rudimentary microbes to living organisms of ever greater physical and cognitive abilities. Creation continues to unfold and life continues to learn through collaborative bottom-up self-organization. We, the human species, must learn to do the same. Our distinctive human ability to shape the future of life on Earth with conscious collective intention is a defining aspect of our distinctive nature. We have yet to acquire, however, the wisdom to use this ability responsibly. The frontiers of science are rapidly deepening our understanding of creation's extraordinary complexity and interdependence. Quantum physics tells us that relationships, not particles, are the foundation of what we experience as material reality. Biology is finding that intelligent life exists only in diverse communities of choice-making organisms that together create and maintain the conditions essential to their individual and collective existence. The social sciences are finding that the most equal human societies are the healthiest, and humans get their greatest satisfaction from caring for other living beings. For thousands of years, humans have turned to religion for our greatest understanding of creation, of our place and purpose within creation, and the ethical principles we must apply in our relations to one another and Earth. Most of our religious teachings, however, are the product of long ago times. Christianity, The faith that now claims more than 2 billion adherents is one of the most recent of major religions. It looks to the authority of the words of a teacher named Jesus, who lived some 2,000 years ago. Earth's total population was then an estimated 300 million, mostly illiterate people. Most could communicate with one another only by meeting physically and speaking one-to-one. Neither Jesus nor any other human of that time had any means to examine creation's distant suns and planets, or the complex and ever-active, invisible inner workings of seemingly solid matter and living organisms. We are now a world of nearly 8 billion, mostly literate people with a capacity for instant communication. And we possess instruments that allow us to view previously invisible worlds. We look to outer space to observe the beginning of time. We observe the complex and dynamic worlds of subatomic particles and microorganisms. Together, these observations give us ever deeper understanding of creation and the human place within it. And yet we are also a world in deep trouble, because we organize as a now global species around a false religion posing as a science dedicated to the worship of money. This religion denies or ignores all this new learning. We call it economics. But far from being a true economics, it is an individualistic, money-centric egonomics that values life only for its market price. It ignores the most basic human needs and our responsibilities as living beings to the finite living Earth community that births and nurtures us. It seems the world's authentic religions concerned with the well-being of people and Earth have spoken too softly, been ignored, or abdicated their essential role in providing humanity with an ethical compass true to our nature as spiritual beings. We're in desperate need of a coming together of the world's religions, not around a new spiritual leader or religious text, but around a process of collective learning as we envision together a possible future grounded in an ethical frame consistent with traditional indigenous understanding, the best established religious teaching, and breakthrough findings on the frontiers of science. We will learn together, drawing from all our many sources of understanding, or we will join the ranks of the many failed species that once thrived, but are now extinct. Leadership in finding our way to the ecological civilization on which our future depends is not likely to come from those seated in positions of power in the establishment institutions responsible for our current crisis. Some among the establishment players may join in the cause, but the most important leadership in creating the future we seek is not likely to come from those responsible for the failure. It is far more likely to come from those who have borne the consequences of that failure. These are the people on whose labor and intelligent collaborative choice-making the thriving communities of a future ecological civilization will depend. So let us embrace our crisis as an epic opportunity. Far from calling us to sacrifice for the well-being of Earth, the emerging vision of an ecological civilization calls us to embrace our current challenge as an opportunity to actualize our human desire and potential to love and to care for one another and Earth. If we simply relieve ourselves of forms of consumption that are ultimately self-destructive, we can meet the essential material needs of all people while remaining well within Earth's limits. Most current human consumption contributes nothing to human well-being. Quite the contrary. Much of it is for war, for obsessive, frivolous consumption driven by advertising rather than need. planned obsolescence, financial speculation and cryptocurrencies that produce nothing of real value. It supports long linear supply chains that best serve corporate interests rather than circular local supply chains that secure community well-being. And it creates cities designed to accommodate cars and office space for activities best eliminated. We must rethink what I call the 3 Ps: purpose, power, and procreation. The purpose of a functioning society and a productive economy is to provide all people with material sufficiency and a spiritual abundant life experience, while supporting the well-being, beauty, and regenerative health and creative unfolding of living Earth's community of life. Societies best fulfill this purpose when power resides in communities of place that empower people to fulfill their responsibilities to and for themselves, one another, and Earth. And every society must support life's continuous regenerative procreation. This requires care for the living systems by which Earth regenerates air, water, and soils while maintaining climate stability. It requires supporting ourselves in managing our human numbers and distribution by assuring that every child is a wanted child who receives the essential support of a loving family and community. Nowhere in the relationships between members of Earth's non-human species do we find equivalents of the human institutions of money, government, business, or religion. It is humbling to acknowledge that our bodies and Earth, what they accomplish without such legal formalities. It's reassuring to recall that until recently, humans did as well. Our distinctive ability to reshape our relationships with one another and Earth resides in our ability to choose with conscious collective intention our culture, our institutions, our technology, and our infrastructure. Making the changes now needed in these choices is a very ambitious goal. And far from having the right answers in hand, we have barely begun even to ask the right questions. Yet just as we have made very bad choices, we can also make good choices. And we now have the communications tools needed to do so. Can we do it with the required speed? We will know only if we try. Let us begin with a set of guiding ethical principles guided by our best current understanding of our true nature and potential as living beings. The 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism, formalized in 1985, come to mind as a starting point. Especially Principle 1, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Principle 2, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And Principle 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. In the year 2000, the Earth Charter launched with its call to join together to bring forth a sustainable global society founded on respect for nature, universal human rights, economic justice, and a culture of peace. It is now endorsed by over 7,000 organizations and 50,000 individuals. Then in 2015, the Parliament of the World's Religions issued a declaration on climate change that closed with these words: "The future we embrace will be a new ecological civilization and a world of peace, justice, and sustainability, with the flourishing of the diversity of life. We will build this future as one human family within the greater Earth community." In that very same year, 2015, Pope Francis issued his Laudato Si encyclical. A product of deep study and long debate by a diverse body of Catholic thought leaders, it calls the world's people to care for one another and Earth. Then on May 25th, 2021, the Vatican launched the Laudato Si Implementation Action Plan, applying the encyclical's principles of care for Earth's community of life to every aspect of church activity. Imagine this action of the Catholic Church as an inspiration and model for each of the world's religions, with UUs encouraging and facilitating the interfaith discussion. I see two defining questions as we move forward together. One, what do we truly believe about our human nature and the purpose of our existence? Two, if these beliefs are correct, what are the implications for what we must now do together? So Lucy, Ollie, Michael, you each have a long history of UU leadership, and I'm very eager to hear your thoughts on what the implications might be for UU congregations, both individually and as transformational forces within and beyond their individual communities.
Okay. We have a question we want to ask everybody, and that's what is your vision of a better world that works for everyone, everywhere? And what appeals to you about the possibility of an ecological civilization? We're going to do a breakout for about 13 minutes, and we'll give you a heads up shortly before. Let's see, breakout. Just a second. Sure. We're going to go into breakout rooms, and Ollie, 3. Only 1. Breakout group number 4 said, and Nanette's been through Pachamama training, and she said that Van Jones put forward the theory that if everyone had to choose a lot in life, it shouldn't matter which lot you get, because everyone should get a decent life. Yeah. And I think that's an interesting concept. We talked population seems to scare everybody, and they note on Drawdown that women empowered could do more if they were educated. We would empower women, and that would definitely put a dent in the population. And Nanette wants plastics illegal because we're filling up the oceans with them, and instead of cutting back, we're opening new plastic plants and trying to use up the fracking gas, which we shouldn't have. Let's see. Kathy, do you want to report on what your group said?
Oops, wait a minute. One of us.
Kathy, you're muted.
I know.
Oh,
I have Steve open. I think Susan was going to report for our group.
Okay.
Our group was focused on thinking that economic justice and getting the world's resources shared, making sure that the air and water are clean. So part of environmental justice, that if people weren't enslaved by consumerism, that we would have, that there'd be more resources for other people, and that we are grateful for what we have, but we feel a little bit of frustration because it seems like corporations are so powerful and other people are so powerful that what can happen, the things that we would like to see, there being more equity in the world, so that there weren't people that were hungry, there weren't people suffering in war, there weren't people being forced into migration due to things happening due to other people trying to essentially take their resources, or them being left with because of what's happening with climate change. And that it would be nice if we became stewards of our natural world and not dominators of our natural world. That if everyone just had what they needed, as opposed to wanting to accumulate a bunch of crap, that we'd all be a lot better off.
I realize now that I need to tell people they have about 2 minutes, and that's still going to push us over a little bit. Ollie, do you have a report from your group?
we had a really good conversation. We started kind of grounding, taking a few breaths and actually trying to imagine ourselves in this world that we want to live in. And then we shared a bit of our visions and our sources of inspiration for that. Richard mentioned David Korten's book, The Great Turning, has a few great things in there, and recommended that book as a source of inspiration. And yeah, we had a really good conversation. Trying to think what else to pull from it. We started talking about, like, echoing a lot of what Susan said, that feeling of how do we, can we actually see a path forward when we know these corporations have so much power? And we talked about how climate change is affecting what the future can look like and what we're dealing with, and also how we can get to 100% renewable energy. Also ethical energy, looking at, I shared stories of meeting Native people resisting lithium mines right now, and how switching to renewables means these lithium mines are coming to their neighborhood, whether they want them or not. And we have these, there's notions of green colonialism. So we can't just continue being extractive for a green economy. We have to actually change some of our assumptions and expectations in order to not be extractive about the way in which we would go to renewable energy. And then we ran out of time, but there's so much more that we could delve into. Check.
Sure. Steve, do you have something for us?
Yes, I do. First off, I started talking about getting rid of the patriarchy, going back to the matriarchy, and I have firm memories of reading both The Chalice and the Blade, and several people agreed with that. I think the patriarchy is a huge source of our problems of too much power, and basically noted that it's not the leaders for this new movement of an ecological civilization are going to come from us, not from the existing leaders in the corporate business power structure that exists now. Evangelical youth help to move us along. Groups like Move to Amend which are trying to pass a constitutional amendment to do away with corporations or people, to get rid of the horrible Citizens United decision. And we really need to be in touch with nature, be in touch with ourselves, and be in touch with our own sacredness. They need to go back to ancient Celtic wisdom. So that's a
Great. Great. Michael, are you ready to share what was in your group?
Sure. We had Dawn, Karen, Lucy, and Dana, and a couple themes I think came up. First one was the desire to see how we can get youth or kids engaged more in terms of gardens and going out in nature and trying to use that resource to hopefully bubble up from the bottom up some change that we might want to see. Second theme that I think I got was that we need to step back a little bit and learn from the past, not just past of the bad things we've done, but learn from those folks who might be able to provide us some wisdom and some guidance on how to move forward. And the third theme I think was local. Got to start local, got to work local. It's the old bottom up approach, and we need to concentrate on that. So those kind of three themes I heard.
Yeah, and actually everybody kind of touched on the same subjects that we had in our breakout group. Michael is going to continue speaking. He's from Cedars UU in, is it Bainbridge? Is where you're
Yeah, Bainbridge. I'll show everybody a map where I'm from.
okay.
So Terry, can you allow me to share my screen? I think you have to just go in and say,
Well,
let me see. Can people see the screen?
I think you can do it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there you go. Okay, I will go. So my name is Mike Cox, and just show you where I'm from. Seattle's here, Bainbridge Island's here, and then we have the Kitsap Peninsula. So yeah, we're a ferry ride away, and this is where David Korten lives right there, and I live up here. So I'm going to talk quickly about two things: Cedars Unitarian Church that I belong to, and then some called Interfaith Council that's here in our area. First, with Cedars, we have about, what do we have, about 80 people now, down from about 120 during for the pandemic, and a very active congregation. And some of the things that we've done, we formed a group, a Social Environmental Justice Committee, that every month tries to do three things. We try to have a special collection. This month it's for Earth Justice. We try to have an event. This month in October, it's going to be Get Out the Vote, postcarding. And then we try to have a sermon that doesn't always work. In this month, it's climate change. And a group of us are going to be talking about our stories about climate change and where we go. So we established a committee. And then what we've also done, the city has started something called the Climate Smart Bainbridges. It's a program to try to figure out how we reduce our greenhouse gases and prepare our community. We have about 18 families that have joined, and we meet once a month to talk through about what they can do at their house and in their life to reduce both carbon footprint and prepare. So we got a nice group of people that are working on that. And then outside, we have a core group of people that were in our environmental and social justice group that have worked with other groups to do events. One that we've done is something called the Climate and Energy Forum pre-pandemic. Once a month, we bring in speakers about climate and energy to talk about it, and more importantly, at the end, talk about what actions we could take in our community and at the state level to make some change. So we usually had 50 to 100 people at those. Sometimes we actually got the governor to come once, which is kind of a coup. He lives on Bainbridge Island, Governor Inslee. We also did something, Movies That Matter, once a month at the library. We would have a movie, environmental or climate theme, We have the movie show it, and then we have a local speaker who had dealt with that issue to have a conversation. So we tried to engage people that way. And finally, we have something called a climate change committee on the island. Our group, along with others, worked to get that committee. I'm the chair of that committee. We established it in 2017. We wrote a climate action plan, and now the city is trying to implement it. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what Cedars has been doing. Interfaith Council, it consists of about probably 20 different congregations from around the area. And their job, or what they do, is get together and talk about how they can advocate for, let's say, affordable housing or environmental, which they hadn't had much. So we formed something called the Interfaith Council Climate Circle. And right now we have 18 people from different congregations that come together. And a couple of things that we're doing, we're putting on something called climate cafes. Now what these are a time where people can come together and not trying to convince anybody about climate change, but what we're trying to do is set a safe area, a safe place where people can talk about their feelings and what their any anxieties or about climate change and their relationship to nature. So we've had a couple of these, had some mixed success in getting people there, but they're a really cool model, I think, and we're going to try to do more of those. Something we're also, the IFC Climate Circle is doing is climate conversations. And what that is about is we have a group in the Climate Circle who are going to go out to congregations and do speeches, and not speeches, but sermons. And we're collecting information so those congregations, if they want, can tap into those resources in order to share with their congregations what they're doing and how to talk about climate change. So we're starting that program. And then finally, we have something called the Climate Pledge. This is a pledge that has seven things we're asking congregations to pledge to. One, just a couple examples. I agree we have a climate emergency. I plan to determine my footprint and reduce it by 50% by 2030. Another one, I pledge to learn how to write effective letters and op-eds, for example, Third Act and other organizations. So we're trying to get congregations to make a climate pledge with 7 concrete steps that they can do. And finally, what's next? We're going to organize in the spring, or try to, a day for congregations in our area to do something on climate change. So everybody's doing something that's specific to their congregation that fits what they want to do, fits their faith, and how that works. We're writing op-eds. We're going to have one hopefully in a week or two in our local newspaper about what the Interfaith Council's Climate Circle is, how people can get involved, and how we can help them if they'd like. We're trying to get a website up, and many of you may know most of our folks are a little elderly. We're not very good at that, so I've tried to engage the high school kids to help us out, and hopefully we got a couple that will help us work through creating a website. And finally, outreach. We're going to continue to do outreach. So that's it. I just wanted to run through real quick kind of what we're doing. And I guess, I don't know, Terry, if you have a minute or two for questions or need to move on. Okay.
Does anybody have any questions?
Okay.
Oh, we're
Well,
supposed
thanks,
to have a
everybody.
break after. Pardon?
I said thanks to everybody, and hope you're out there doing good stuff.
Oh,
This is Brigham. I would comment that is a solid plan for think local, or think globally, act locally. This is what people can do. I mean, what can one person do? Well, they can do what you're doing. And to recap and to look again at the recording of what you've done will be instructive. So thank you. I would throw in on a different, I have a comment about our group meeting, but let's keep focused on this for right now. Any other comments for Michael?
Michael, I was wondering if you have sermons available that could be done on Zoom or some other platform.
That's a great question. We're in the process of trying to figure that out. It's always a challenge when you got 18 folks who all come from a different perspective on trying to herd the cats, as I say. So that's our goal, Dana. We don't have that yet.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, we're supposed to have a break here. We're actually 2 minutes early on the break because Michael knew we were behind 2 minutes and he made up for it. Are we ready for a break?
If I may,
Okay.
I'd like to add just one thing from our
Mhm.
group. Just another point that it was brought up religiously. The question of religions that focus on humans and God saving, and do we need to be more active about raising the issue of, is there a problem on the earth? Is that religious approach copacetic with the problem, if there is a problem? As you use, well, everyone's got to figure it out, and we leave it to people to do that. But at what stage do we say, is there an emergency that can't wait for not raising these issues more strongly? And just a different question. I thought that's a subject that was worth considering. So.
Okay, well, we're going to take about 5 minutes and come back with Ollie.
Kathy, are you available? Are you there? And maybe Steve or anyone. That is in my role as facilitator. I was a little late getting to my group, but I saw that people from my group were able to get to another meeting, so that was good. Sorry about the handoff, but is I don't know. Lucy, I see you're moving there, so I'm just going to say hello to you. One reason I had difficulty, I was switching from my phone to my regular computer just at the moment the groups were starting off, so it didn't help my group, but we have a small thing, that all recovered. Turns out that today at my service, there's a service for someone who died recently in our congregation, and I'm sort of two-timing. And I'm thinking that
Ollie Tharp is ready to speak to us, I think. Okay. The video stopped and you disappeared for a minute there. Okay. I will mute and Ollie will unmute.
Okay, here we go. I just got a phone call at the exact moment you said that, Terry, but here we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. Great to be with you. Again, I'm Allie Tharp. I'm based in Austin, Texas. I work with Green Faith as a senior organizer on the United States and North America team. And I wanted to give you a little bit of background on me and how I came into this work. So basically, I grew up in North Texas in a suburb of Dallas. It was a very competitive, corporate, typical suburban culture. And I went to school in far north Texas, about 20 minutes from Oklahoma, in a place called Austin College. And I went into college wanting to do economic work around poverty alleviation, international development. I was really inspired by Muhammad Yunus and the microfinance lending that he started in Bangladesh. And when I went in, I ended up getting a reframe of, wanting to do this economic justice work, but taking a freshman orientation class, and my professor, who was my main mentor throughout my undergrad, was the sustainability and environmental studies professor. And it took all of my interest in, human rights and justice and economic issues and reframed them within the environmental issues and looked at that intersection of environmental, ecological, and social well-being. And so that I feel very lucky that I was introduced to this kind of mental reframe, when I was 18 years old, and have been really blessed with this opportunity and this calling to work on it. If someone would mute, I hear some background noise. Maybe Julia. Thanks. So those were my humble beginnings. I joined the tar sands blockade pipeline campaign right out of college in 2012, and really took a deep dive into environmental activism, having grown up in a place and gone to college in a place where social movements didn't really exist. I went from that environment to living in the woods and showing up at tree sits and physical situations where people were locking themselves to machines to stop construction, or to gates so that people couldn't get the pipelines out into the pipe yards. So it was a very, very big learning curve for me in what environmental activism can look like. And it was through joining that campaign that I came into faith-based activism. There was a church in East Texas called Austin Heights Baptist Church, and they were a progressive Baptist church in the middle of a very conservative area. And that church had been praying for a young adult ministry and wanting to bring in more young people into the church. And then they realized, oh, there's this surge of young people in our area to fight this pipeline. And they have so much stress that they're under, and so much grief and difficulty that, fighting a multi-billion-dollar corporation brings. Let's minister to this campaign. Let's minister to the tar sands blockaders. And so they opened their home to us. They opened their church to us. We formed really close relationships with the members of that congregation, and people met their future wives through this church. Like it was this really beautiful connection that formed, starting around alignment around the issues, but it turned into something deeper, to the point that before the pandemic, for 8 years, we celebrated the holiday with the members of that congregation, and people came back across the country to East Texas because that depth of caring was so impactful. So that is what has been the foundation of my belief that faith-based organizing can be transformative, can really make a difference in campaigns to stop a project or start a good project. So there's something about the strength of community that a church has, the infrastructure that a church has, also the position within cultural norms and expectations that religious communities have, that when we come together and use these resources, use these gifts and unique positions within our culture, within our society, it can have really transformative and important impacts. So all of us are here today because we're part of faith communities, and together we can actually do more than we could do on our own. So through that, I joined the UU Ministry for Earth back in 2014. I was introduced to Ministry for Earth through a member of the tar sands blockade who said, hey, you should apply for a job. And so I joined UU Ministry for Earth to support the UU Young Adults for Climate Justice Network, which still exists to support our young adult UU climate activists. If you know any young adults who are caring about these issues and looking for a community to connect with, send them to uumfe.org. I also want to invite each of you to go to uumfe.org. You can join and get on the newsletter, and that's a really good way to get updates about what's going on across the denomination, great resources, curriculums, and webinars. So they continue to be a resource for education, spiritual grounding, and practical support for UUs who want to do this work together. And then I also wanted to share with you what I'm doing now at Green Faith. So I have a short PowerPoint for you. I don't know if that worked. 1 second. I have it on a different okay. Okay, so Green Faith is a global organization. It started in New Jersey about 30 years ago. And our mission is this: because the earth and all people are sacred and at risk, Green Faith is building a worldwide multi-faith climate and environmental movement. Together, our members create communities to transform ourselves, our spiritual institutions, and society to protect the planet and create a compassionate, loving, and just world. So right now we're in the middle of an international mobilization called Faiths for Climate Justice. And this started not that long ago on October 2nd, and it runs through the beginning of the next United Nations Climate Conference, COP27, which is in Egypt, on November 6th. And the goal here is to bring out the faith voice to elevate and uplift this issue and a few demands in the lead up to the COP27. So we're calling as people of faith globally for immediate ending of new fossil fuel projects and deforestation, a rapid transition to 100% renewable energy, and a just transition for marginalized people. And so this will look different in different local contexts, but these are uniting visions for what we want to see world leaders do around these issues. And so I wanted to also share the way we do this. I think I mentioned in the chat, it's not just what we do, it's how we do it. And you know, with what we're trying to do here is to bring our religion, our spirituality, our faith into the streets and into the halls of power. So taking action openly, respectfully, boldly, and non-violently. And, you know, this action might look different from just showing up to a secular organized action with the banner from your congregation, but actually organizing our own public demonstrations and actions that weave in ritual, that weave in prayer, that weave in, you know, the shofar you see in the middle of the Jewish community, blowing the horn, and bringing that voice to the streets. So we're sharing our moral message and our community's good energy, and our strength as a faith community. And we're also being welcoming and making it easy for people to connect with us. So always open, inviting, loving, peaceful, but bold and clear about what we want to see and what is morally required of us in this moment. So I also am on the People versus Fossil Fuels Steering Committee to bring people of faith into this broad coalition around putting pressure on President Biden to declare a climate emergency and use every tool that President Biden has in his toolbox to accelerate the transition that we need. So I have a very short video that I'll play right. Oh, I don't think I put the audio. Let me share sound. But just to give you a little bit of context for People versus Fossil Fuels. Maybe your congregation has endorsed this. 250 faith groups have endorsed the People versus Fossil Fuels Coalition. And then, you know, this is one way that you can direct of your local people. So briefly, I'll just say, yes, we have much better shots than we would if Biden had lost the last election. Biden has done way more than we could have ever expected Trump to do, but there's still so much he can do and needs to do. And it's going to take public pressure from people like us in order to get the most that we can out of our current administration on climate. And we see a trend recently of compromise in this department. And, the permitting deal, if anyone's paying attention to the Inflation Reduction Act, and then there's this side deal around permitting, which will accelerate fossil fuel infrastructure production. We're working to stop the Manchin side deal right now. So there's really key important things that we're trying to organize the faith community to engage in, both locally and nationally. And so I want to just explicitly invite you to join the People versus Fossil Fuels Coalition with Green Faith. And lastly, I know I'm running out of time. I did want to say two more things. One is Green Faith operates through forming local circles, very similar to what Mike shared in terms of the local interfaith council. So it's basically, it could be anchored in your congregation, or it can be anchored in an existing local interfaith team that wants to do more public action around climate, or it can be a new formation of people of faith who want to work on climate and environmental issues. But we support local green faith circles to organize and build community and be a public voice for change. And then I wanted to end with a reading, and it's from Adrienne Marie Brown, who is a facilitator, an environmental justice educator, a podcaster, an author. And Adrienne Marie Brown's book, Emergent Strategy, is one that I would recommend for looking into how we can organize in a way that's in alignment with like the way that the earth organizes, the way the spirit of life organizes. So Emergent Strategy is about that. How do we look at the way nature organizes itself and apply that to how we can organize humanity for change? So this is a quote from Adrienne Marie Brown. "We are living in impossible times. If it were fiction, it would be critiqued as hyperbolic. If it were nightmares, we would never sleep. We are living in times created by our own species. I can't remember the last time my tears weren't man-made. It feels like everything is broken. We must, each of us, fix our attention on the nearest wound, conjure within us the smallest part of ourselves that are still whole, and be healers. Heal with words and prayer and energy. Heal with money, clean water, time, and action. There's enough destruction. There's enough nothingness swallowing the living world. Don't add to it. There's enough. Our visions are ropes through the devastation. Looking further ahead, like our ancestors did. Look further, extend, hold on, pull, evolve."
Okay, thank you, Ollie. I guess we'll move directly with Reverend Dr. Lucy Hitchcock, as we're about 5 minutes late.
Okay, it is so good to be back in contact with people in Florida, and it sounds like from all over the US. I love my time in Florida, our South Miami congregation with its lovely land, the palm trees, the fox and birds. the abundant waters nearby, the towering cumulus clouds that Florida claims as its mountains. David Korten has given Unitarian Universalists a challenge to use our principles to address the emergencies that we're living through now. We know these threats too well, even more than David mentioned: climate crisis, pandemic, war, economic inequality, democracy in peril, and the depletion of the vital resources of our finite Earth. What happens following Eon is a test case of what we can offer to save and repair one state's ecosphere and raise out of poverty nearly 40% of Florida's residents, and probably increasing. Environmental and economic justice. David names religion and spiritual understanding as the locus of humanity's ethics, but we must take heartfelt resolve to live up to it. David brought us the South African concept of Ubuntu. I am because you are. I'll add, we are because the earth is. We are because of our parents and ancestors. Future generations will be because of what we are now. We are in an interdependent web. We would do well to recall and celebrate the amazing gifts of the natural world, from microscopic to outer space, and the miracle that we have been given birth into this world of wonder. The mystic Meister Eckhart is quoted as saying, "If the only prayer we ever say is thank you, that will be sufficient." Indeed, every morning when we breathe and gaze, let us pray thank you, gracias. Muhammad is quoted as saying, "The earth is a mosque." Translation, no building is required. We can pray in thanksgiving for this gift of life anywhere on earth. And in that place, for love of that place, the work to save our earth begins. Our Unitarianism was born in heresy. In Greek, heresy originally meant choice, but soon choice against a prevailing Trinitarian religious worldview. We became a religion of reason and of standing up for what we believed. Our universalism originally meant a belief not in a religion of the elect and the damned, but a religion of universal salvation. The call before UUs now is twofold: to stand up against an economic worldview, an entrenched financial and taxation system we Americans buy and build into, that favors the haves and has exploited the earth's resources. And second, to work individually and collectively to nurture the earth and all living beings. I suggest combining two of our principles to create our mission to achieve an ecological civilization. We affirm and will now promote the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, with justice, equity, and compassion for all. Our religion offers principles based on our heritage. Our congregations offer worship services to inspire us with poetry and song, candles to share our joys and concern, time for meditation, and words to unpack the society we live in and inspire our response. We baptize and name our newborns with clear water. We have ceremonies to marry our beloveds and to bless the animals. In memorial services, we honor those of us who die with stories of their contributions to life. Our congregations offer community, folks with whom to share our life's journey. They offer small gatherings of board and committees, social action task forces, groups for meditation, for support, for ministry. When there are life challenges, we need ideas and comfort for ministry. When there are life challenges, we need a place to share what troubles us with kind friends and what joys inspire us to thankfulness and to action. We welcome strangers to join us. Many congregations offer mutual aid to their members and pass the plate for the community beyond. In this time of such pressing challenges, I cannot urge enough the importance of small groups, where time is given for check-ins, listening, and response. To really confront this is terrorizing. There is a phrase that provides guidance. I heard someone say it earlier: think globally, act locally. Swedish Greta Thunberg wrote, "The fact that 3 billion people use less energy on an annual per capita basis than a standard American refrigerator gives you an idea of how far away from global equity and climate justice we currently are." Yes Magazine reported the UN's Sustainable Development Goals can be achieved worldwide with an energy flow of about 1,300 watts per capita per year. That's comparable to the supply of energy in Cuba today. Thinking thus globally gives a shocking frame of reference for achieving environmental justice. Go home and look at your energy bills at your monthly wattage and multiply by 12. Subtract 1,300 to see how far to reduce your annual portion. City climate action includes retrofitting homes and buildings, electrifying the fleets of police cars and fire trucks, creating safe bath paths, planting trees in parks and low-income neighborhoods, ensuring clean air and water for all residents, providing public transportation and urging people ourselves to use it. It means capping the use of fossil fuels and replacing them with renewables, not by 2040 or even 2030, but right now. As we can see in Florida, it is already too late to prevent damage. When we speak up as people of faith, politicians take notice. It is likely that there are already nonprofit climate action groups in your communities. I know mine has a 350.org Salem group that meets twice a month. It is where I go to hear what the city council is working on, what they're doing for their climate action plan. 350 Salem does not let the city duck its climate action plan. As Obama once said to those who wanted him to act, "Make me do it." That is our job as citizens.
You're muted now.
Write letters in March, not just for Earth Day, but when climate legislation or city rulemaking is up for a vote. There is more we can do without government. Our causative actions are everything we've bought, built, eaten, driven, or flown in that uses fossil fuels, pollutes air and water, and depletes our soils. So we must do better. Go to the farmer's market or grow your own fruit and vegetables. Eat real food, mostly plants, not too much. Plant milkweed for the monarchs and flowers for the bees, can, freeze, or dry, whatever possible. I've learned to make my own yogurt so I don't have to buy plastic tubs. Join beach parties to clean plastic from the sand. Your congregation would benefit from solar panels. Replace any gas or oil appliances with electric. Restore, recycle, reuse. Make do with the clothes you own. Our culture's addictive purchasing habits, our government's ever encouraging economic growth have brought us to this calamity. No one person's abstinence. No one person's abstinence will not make a big difference. But you use being an example can help create the cultural movement we need. Changing habits is not easy, but with support, we can do what seems impossible at first. Keep a journal of fulfilling your own and your congregation's climate action plans. Share aloud what you're striving for. Thankfully, there are national and international governmental and technological solutions being done. But congregations are local institutions. Localization means attending to and building up our communities and regions. Local action means building relationships, holding a rummage sale to meet your neighbors, building interfaith networks. Put your money in a local green bank or credit union. Withdraw from dependence on mega banks like Chase, Citi, and Wells Fargo that invest in fossil fuels. Avoid chain stores. Many corporations, transnational and national, including for healthcare and energy, are a big underreported cause of inflated prices because they can get away with it. I heard last night that Kroger stores and Safeway and Albertsons will soon merge. It is stockholders who will prosper, not workers and shoppers. Localism means supporting local businesses and industries, both so folks have jobs, vocational fulfillment, and relationships with their patrons, but also so that money recirculates in the community, does not leave town. Close, I'll tell a story about birds and a cat. I love birds. This story is my inspiration to have the courage to keep on working to save our Earth for the next generation. While at my computer, and right now, I look out on fruit trees and a bluebird house that perches on a tall pole. In the late spring, a bluebird pair built a nest in it, lay eggs, and took turns bringing food to the nestlings. One day, a neighbor's cat sat beneath the pole, staring up at the birdhouse. It moved to climb the pole. Out of a pear tree flew a female goldfinch, dive bombing the cat. The cat dropped down, waited, then scrambled up higher. The goldfinch dive bombed again, and the cat backtracked to the grass. A third time, the cat scrambled up almost to the level of the birdhouse. And once again, this tiny yellow tinged bird, not even the same species as the bluebirds, flew at the cat, not hitting it, but close. The cat dropped down and ran away, and I cheered. It will take courage and caring, like that valiant wee bird who saved creatures far different from ourselves. Let us pray together a Navajo prayer. Walk in happiness. Walk with many plants green growing. Walk in joy with rain. Beauty before us, beauty behind us, beauty below us, beauty above us, beauty all around us. In beauty, it is begun. In beauty, let it be done.
Thank you, Lucy. That was wonderful. Now we're going to, well, we're not going to do the small group because we're just a couple minutes late. So we'll start the large group right now. I'm going to start by just saying that UUJEC, UU's for Just Economic Community, did a webinar about 2 months ago with two congregations. One was Saltwater UU in Des Moines, Washington, and the other one was my church, the UU Fellowship of Ames. And they both have climate action to interfaith climate action teams. And if you want to model, there were two models, and the one in Ames is trying to approach our city government and very local. And in Des Moines, Washington, they were interfering with pipelines. And so they have more of a mega view, but they both were two ways of approaching it. And both have been very successful. And the webinar is on our webinar page. I'll put it in the chat. It's pretty easy. Does anybody have any questions for our presenters?
And to tell us what you'll do when you go home. We want to hear that.
Lucy, I would just like to say that you introduced me to Korten's The Great Turning. And that has inspired so much of my thinking about things that we do every day without even thinking about it. And what is really important for human beings in terms of achieving a just and sustainable society and an earth that is healthy. And I mentioned it to my new UU fellowship here in Connecticut, and I'm planning on creating a service around it, just like you did for us at UU Miami. In fact, you led a book group, and I'd like to model what I try here on what you did for us way back when.
Great.
What I try to do, and I've been accused of being an old man because I just see where I might be able to do a little bit less. Like I don't have to have a big blob of toothpaste, a little smaller blob, and I don't have to use a big handful of shampoo. I hardly have any hair. It's amazing I need any. And just that kind of thing, just things that we use every day, use a little bit less. And it's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to change the world, but it might help if everybody does it. Well, these are UUs that are on here. UUs always have a comment. Let's hear what you have to say.
How are we going to take this home? That's the question before us in this period. And it's a hard question to answer for me always at the end of one of these workshops. But I did get a little kernel from Ally when she talked about these small groups, these local circles that she talked about. How can we form one locally? And well, we already have a nucleus of one here in Broward County, and that's the Broward Climate Alliance. We've been meeting monthly for several years, but how can we expand that to start taking up this question of ecological civilization rather than just having our meetings, different groups reporting what they're doing? And that to me is the question that I'm taking back with me with local activists that I know. One is on this meeting right now, Scott Lewis.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Rabbi Barry Silver, and I always enjoy listening to the Unitarian Universalists on so many issues. From my experience, my religious experience, I'm quite familiar with what went on during the Holocaust, when most people were rather silent and didn't express the level of outrage that was needed to meet the challenge. Today, we have a Holocaust, not just of a people, we have a Holocaust of a planet. And I see a similar lack of outrage, lack of concern, lack of confrontation. There's forces inexorably working against us, and most of us are way, way, way too quiet, way too passive. It was Gus Speth who said that he used to think the worst environmental problems were climate change or habitat loss. And then he said, no, the worst environmental problem is apathy. And we were confronted with apathy, ignorance, or many religions which are just part of the problem and just teaching that the earth belongs to us, God will prepare as many, whatever we need from the earth, he'll prepare, and there's another one waiting anyway, a better world afterwards. I think we need to be far more challenging, confrontational of the status quo, and speaking out against the fundamentalism that is really keeping us on this inexorable path towards destruction. In my experience, I found that the Unitarian Universalists are very refined, very polite, very dignified, very tolerant. I don't think that works. I don't think it's going to work to meet this challenge. I encourage everyone to speak up and to challenge. That's what Jewish people do all the time. And we need allies who are educated and knowledgeable. I'll also just say that the presentations that were made, I think, are excellent and amazing. And I'm reminded of the quotation to have knowledge and not to share it is a great sin. We have knowledge, but we're not doing enough to share it with others who might not want to hear it, but they need to be woken up. So those are my comments. I thank you for organizing this. And if you ever need any assistance from the Jewish community, I'm your loyal foot soldier. I'm very impressed by what you put together here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. A message we need to hear loud and clear.
I want to just circle back to inviting people. So Faiths for Climate Justice, this mobilization, there's no event in Southeast Florida yet. And if you were to do a vigil, a prayer, a public demonstration of faith, you know, maybe right before COP27 launches, that gives you 3 weeks, or maybe one exists and it's not on the map yet. Steve, I see your hand. Yeah.
I'd like to mention that this event today was registered with Faith
Oh,
for
great.
Climate Justice.
Beautiful.
So we are part of it.
Awesome. And there's a vigil in Clearwater Beach on October 22nd for those in that area that popped up. There's 2 in Florida right now. Thank you for getting this on the map. And then there's one event I'll slap my hand. I haven't added to the map yet, but there's a UU the Vote, Green Faith, and Dianu are partnering for a Get Out the Vote Day of Action on October 25th with the Environmental Voter Project, which targets reaching out to environmentalists who are too despairing to vote. So, and just as environmentalists who may also, be able to encourage, we'll be focusing on reaching out to people like us who care, who might not be wanting to go vote, and trying to do what we can to do that piece of civic engagement. So I just put the link in the chat to register if you want to join. That's at 2 Eastern on October 25th.
Well, if I can share a little bit, I brought it, the organization is critical, but I brought it a little more personal to me, particularly in the breakout group. Doug Friend challenged, am I willing to give up my air conditioning? Am I willing to give up the ability to hop in my car and go shopping? And when Lucy was talking about the transportation talk and costs and buying locally, I'm thinking, I do an awful lot of Amazon shopping. That needs to be eliminated. I lived without it for a long time. I think I can go back to it. But that's the sort of thing I want to look at for me personally, to bring it, my carbon footprint smaller.
There's a great book that you can do as a book study, which is called The Day the World Stops Shopping. We did 3 sessions on it, and somewhere I have the questions we asked. It's a very interesting book because each chapter is a different story. It's not dull. And I just recommend it to you. It's hard to stop shopping, but we can do it.
Thank you.
The most outstanding story in that book was they had a hunter-gatherer from Africa who spent 4 hours a day working, preparing his meals and hunting and gathering and doing whatever cleaning he did. And the rest of the time, the other 20 hours of the day, he had for sleeping, talking, doing whatever. And at this point, I'm doing volunteer work, but I'm probably working 50, 60 hours a week, and he's doing it in 28 hours. There must be something wrong with us. That's all I can say. If he can do it in 28 hours a week, maybe we should be hunter-gatherers, although that might be too much competition.
Speaking of book circles, our congregation in Miami is probably our next book is probably going to be Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategy that Ali mentioned. It's upbeat and positive and creative and energetic about activism. Oh, and it's on Zoom if anybody wants to join. That's why I said it. Once a month.
Put it in the chat.
Okay.
Well, maybe you can send it to Steve and Kathy, and they can send it to the rest of the cluster. The other thing that's going on in Miami is the city is making an effort to put trees in poor neighborhoods, because if you've read the studies, poor neighborhoods are often 5-10 degrees hotter than the more wealthy neighborhoods that have good tree cover. And I'm hoping that we can get our youth to start trees, to grow them from seeds, just as to contribute to this effort. I think they'd have fun taking seeds and planting them.
I planted moringa seeds when I was in Miami on the campus of the church. And it grew so fast that within 3 or 4 years, it was a tall tree with blossoms and seeds. And it's a tree in Africa that saves malnourished children. It is so nutritious. It can save lives. So there are probably seeds hanging from the tree in Miami you could plant.
It's back by the labyrinth. It's a gorgeous tree.
Is it? I'd love to see it again and send me a picture.
Well, I'm not there anymore. Carol,
Oh, you're
can-
not there.
What's the name of that tree?
Moringa.
Oh.
Moringa.
Okay.
It's at the
And let me
labyrinth.
say, yeah, it's by the labyrinth.
Well, Mark will take a picture of it if he's listening. Mark, are you listening? Yep, apparently not. But he
One other
goes to
thing
labyrinth.
I discovered when
No,
I
I
was
am
in-
listening. I'll take a picture when I'm in Miami.
Okay. One other thing to know about in Florida is that it's worth a trip to Echo Farm. It's on the West Coast. I'm not going to remember the names right now, but it's just Echo Farm, and it shows ways that missionaries can go all over the world and work on land and helping people eat and so forth. It's a wonderful field trip. I totally recommend it. Just ECHO.
It's in North Fort Myers.
Yeah, right. Good.
Boy, I hope it still exists
Yeah.
because
It does.
that's where it came through. The
It's inland away.
Clearwater UU has a food forest or food jungle on their campus. And we had the instigator at a webinar. Let's see, Jay. Oh, I don't remember his last name. That's on our website too, on the under webinars.
We're going to, I
So-
have a whole list of references and I could not today get them into the chat, but we will send them to you. There's a lot of videos and books and other things that you can look at over time.
Lucy, send it to me and I'll send it to everybody who registered, not just those who came, but
Okay, I couldn't get it to make a link. Sorry.